Now, the news never stops coming out of Old Trafford at the moment, and whilst it seems mainly positive, Ruben Amorim is about to begin his reign on Sunday. The Daily Mail have been reporting that United are considering cutting the budget they hand to their Disabled Supporters Association in half. This comes amongst an array of cost-cutting measures by INEOS, and next up could be a reduction in the £40,000 given to the Manchester United Disabled Supporters Association. No final decision on this yet has been made. But for the latest, let's bring in Mike Keegan, sports news correspondent from the Daily Mail. Mike, good to have you with us. Just firstly, could you outline to us what the Disabled Association do for and with the club?
Absolutely, but first, I just want to say how happy I am that you've already dealt with Manchester City in the Premier League, because that feels like all we've been dealing with for, as far back as I can remember. As you said, United with INEOS coming in have raised a wide kind of array of cost-cutting measures. They've looked at every department. They've left no stone unturned. And to be fair, there is a reason that they're doing this. It's created a lot of criticism. I think, as we wrote, that they've made 250 people redundant across the business. They're saying that they're doing this because despite the £650 million worth of revenue that United have made, it was a very fatty kind of organisation, and they wanted to make it leaner. And the reason they're doing that is because they want to spend the money that they save on the first team squad, because, as we know, there's a lot of work that needs to be done there. The Disabled Supporters Association gets £40,000 a year, and it's almost like an institution at United Mudsa. It's one of the oldest disabled supporters associations, if not the oldest in the world, at a football club. And it's the players have always really liked doing their bit for it. There's a Christmas party that nearly the entire first team squad attends, and they'll go and see the disabled supporters and pose for selfies, sign autographs. There's events throughout the year. They have a bowling day that's very popular. They have the annual dinner that was only last month. Dennis Irwin was the guest there. And basically the story is that they have been told that £40,000 a year budget that they get for those types of activities could be cut in half to 20,000, which, as I've outlined why they're doing this, that they are looking at money to be spent on the first team. But as a lot of people have pointed out, taking £20,000 away from a group like the Disabled Supporters Association just doesn't seem worth it for the optics and obviously the impact that will have on its members.
Yeah, you mentioned the optics there, Mike. It just seems absolutely bizarre, especially given that they've just paid something like £12 billion to Erik ten Hag and his goodbye package, having left the club. Why is it that they are looking at areas that just seem so minimal to try and lessen everything? What's their justification?
Our argument is that you can't just treat this in isolation. They are looking at similar areas. So while this is only 20,000, this is one of dozens of areas where they can cut 20,000 here, they can cut 20,000 there, and all of a sudden that 20,000 turns into a couple of million, maybe even more than that. But as you've said, that kind of pales into insignificance when you see the payoff that's been given to Ten Hag. If I'm a member of Mudsa, I'm thinking, well, hang on a minute, your decision, why on earth should we be paying for your decision to give Ten Hag to keep him in the first place, to give him an extra year on his contract, and to then back him in the summer with, obviously, signings that don't appear to have worked out yet. And then, you go even beyond that. And INEOS might claim it's not on their watch, but players like Mason Mount, Anthony, why should one of the more worthy areas of the club have to pay for the mistakes of those? And why should you take £20,000 away when that's not even a tenth of a lot of the players' salary in a week?
Mike, what are you hearing from club officials and people at Carrington about the changes since INEOS have come in, the upheaval that they've brought to the club? How are people finding it?
So you hear a lot from people who've left the club. Obviously, that's the nature of the job. They're more inclined to speak to you because they're not worried about losing their jobs, because that's already happened. And they are very, very disappointed and upset with the way it's gone. I think one of the things about United, and I noticed this, I worked at the Manchester Evening News, that was my first job, and the first thing that struck me about United was that from the outside you have a view of it as this huge football club, arguably the biggest football club in the world. And yet when you go through the door at Carrington, when you go through the door at Old Trafford, it always retained a family feel. There were people working in there who'd been there years. It was very down to earth. It felt like a big, but still a family club. And there's a feeling that it's lost a lot of that. It's lost a lot of its soul. Some of the decisions that they've made, there was, the decision around the Wembley FA Cup final tickets and to cut back on the numbers of tickets given to staff, the transport down there. And that used to be a big day out. And that dated back to the days of Matt Busby, Sir Matt, who, we're all in this together. And when we succeed, we all get to share in that. So there is a feeling that United is losing a lot of its soul and a lot of what made it Manchester United. However, the flip side of that, and I know it's only been a week and people are probably scoffed because they've not even played a game yet, the appointment, obviously the biggest thing is what happens on the pitch. And the appointment of Amorim so far he himself has impressed those that have come across his path in the first week. It's a job that obviously needs somebody with charisma, with kind of, the personality to be able to deal with what managing Manchester United brings. And all the signs so far point to him being able to deal with that. And they're all looking forward to finally getting things right on the pitch.
Matt, are you surprised at the optics of some of these decisions from INEOS?
I'm increasingly less surprised because they keep happening, don't they? Which suggests that they're almost entirely balance sheet led and not public relations led, which is a reasonable position. Whether that's the best one in the long run, I'm not personally convinced. Clearly, this is what Jim Ratcliffe does, right? He takes over businesses, often takes over distressed assets, slashes the costs, builds them up. So whilst it may upset United fans and certainly staff, it's not a surprise that that's the way he's operating.
Does this one feel like a step too far, though, taken from the Disabled Supporters Association?
Well, I think it's bananas. I mean, if you got a situation where a saving of £20,000. I mean, on any basis, £20,000 is going nowhere in terms of the context of Manchester United. But it's not just £20,000. I mean, from a PR perspective, it's all well and good to say, well, they're not bothered about PR. Well, they're a consumer-facing business. They have to be bothered about PR. It's a very important element of the brand of Manchester United. And that's quite apart from the impact that it actually has on the association, which presumably slashing the budget in half is going to have a very significant impact because it's in half. So I think it's completely crazy from any sort of standpoint, including, to be honest, from a business perspective, because it's all very well saying, well, INEOS usually go into a manufacturing business that's in distress, and therefore they're looking for every 20,000 they can save. And if you get 50 20,000s, then that's worth quite a lot when you add it all together. But the reality is, that's not the situation. Football clubs are not manufacturing businesses. They're not a distressed manufacturing business. A football club is a very unique organisation, partly because of what it means in the community, but also because there's very few industries in the world where you have maybe 20 people at the top of the organisation that are paid many hundreds of thousands of pounds per week and are often not performing. And that's a unique situation, and it does put into context these sorts of changes that you try and make downstream within the organisation. I think the easiest thing for them to have done, had they decided that this was essential for the profit and loss account of the company, which, as I say, I think is crazy. Very easy for Ratcliffe to just say, we are cutting it in half, but I'm personally putting in the £20,000 a year. There we go. So don't worry about it in terms of your money. We want to do it because we want to keep the club as sound as possible from a financial perspective. But don't worry, Mudsa, you'll be whole because Sir Jim has put his hand in his pocket. And in any event, if he was paying tax in the UK, he could get gift aid and he could get another 25% on top. But if he's not, then that might not work.
Yeah, it does seem bizarre. Mike, thank you very much indeed for your time. Mike Keegan, their sports news correspondent from the Daily Mail.